Going to record this. Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Women Who Code Boulder Denver's Career Internship Group. Today, we have a special event, Leveling Up Your Software Engineering Career, with Dan Klos, co-founder and CEO at Outco. Before diving into the topic, I would like to take a few minutes to talk about Women Who Code and Career Internship Group. So, Women Who Code is a nonprofit organization with global presence. We have over 250,000 members, presence all over the world, almost all over the world, and we are growing. And Boulder, Denver is the Colorado chapter. And career. And I'm Rafna. I forgot to introduce me. I'm one of the directors for Boulder Denver chapter, and I'm also the network lead for Career Returnship Group. Career Returnship is an initiative of Boulder Denver chapter to support and guide women returning to work after career break. So we learn together. We do some few projects for other nonprofit organization. Um, we prepare for the interviews to get the job. So we provide all the support and guidance that needed to get that full-time job. So you can learn more about our organization and career internship group through our websites, womenhookout.com / Boulder Denver to know more about our chapter. And this is our website for career internship.netlify.app. We ourselves built that website. So I'm proud to say that this is one of our projects. Our mission is to inspire women to excel in technology careers. Our vision is to create a world where diverse women are better represented as engineers and tech leaders. We do have a code of conduct. Women Who Code is an inclusive community. Our events are intended to inspire women to excel in technology careers, and anyone who is there for this purpose is welcome. Our code of conduct applies to all Women Who Code events and online communities. Read the full version and access our incident report at Women Who Code / code of conduct. We connect with us in all our social media platform. Our Colorado chapter has presence on Facebook, Insta, Twitter, Slack, LinkedIn. We have a Women Who Code YouTube channel where you can find all our recorded events from our chapter and all other chapters of Women Who Code. To access easily our platforms, you can go to the Linktree link that's written on the bottom middle Linktree / WWCode Colorado. So you can get all the social media platforms in there. So tag us and let us know what you're doing. So we can also share and improve your network. So our next event is a monthly JavaScript on April 5. We are doing an event with Firebase. And so you can RSVP on meetup.com. Another major event is coming up is a Women Who Code Connect conference on June 10 to 11. So we are inviting proposals for speakers. So you can get the details on womenwhocode.com / connect CFP. Submit any proposals that you can and or join us our conference so you can mingle and connect and expand to your network of women who's working in this industry. We are going to our event topic, leveling up your software engineering career. So I'm inviting Dan to proceed.
All right. Thank you so much, Rafna. That was a wonderful introduction. And hello, everybody. Very grateful to be here with you on your, what is this, Thursday evening. Especially, I know there's a lot of you in Colorado. That's mountain time, if I'm not mistaken. So it's even a little later in your evening. So very grateful. I think I saw someone busting out a glass of wine and it's getting to be about that time. Yep, there it is, Becca. Got the right idea there. So I might be indulging in that myself right after this. So I'm gonna share my screen here And if I could just get a confirmation that y'all can see it. Um, Good. All right, got thumbs up from Ronnie. All right, thank you so much, Becca, Ryan. Cool, Joey. Thank you. All right. Well, as Rafna said, my name's Dan, one of the co-founders here at Outco, and very grateful to be here with you. Like I said, we've had a couple folks from Women Who Code go through our program. We've been kind of intermingled with Women Who Code for years now, and always great. And the organization does great work, so it's really an honor to be here. So thank you again. A little bit of an overview here of the what we'll be doing here. Getting started. We're in it right now. The intro, 5 minutes, should be pretty quick. Then we're going to get into the leveling up your software engineering career. Be about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So any questions that y'all have, I'll be happy to stay and get them all answered. We've got this. I love working in these meeting types of Zoom meetings instead of the what are they called, webinars, because you can actually see everybody. So I tend to enjoy the Q&A much more at that point. So specifically for this session, we'll be doing questions at the end, and we'll be doing the unmute and ask any questions that you have, and I will be more than happy to answer them, at least to the very best of my ability. And if you want, if something comes up during the session, feel free to pop it into the chat. I tend not to break the cadence. I've gotten feedback in the past that doesn't work as well that way. We've gotten that we want to hold the questions until the end, but feel free to pop them into the chat, kind of preserve it if you need to, or take it down on your end to take a note. And again, I'll be happy to answer any and all the questions that you've got. Little bit about us, just so you know who we are, what we do at Outco. What is an Outco? We're a software engineer career accelerator. We've been around since 2015, so over 5 years. Not something we're new to. We train software engineers in CS fundamentals and what we call career skills, confidence, communication, leadership-oriented types of skills, with the intention of helping engineers through the interview and job search process so that they can land a job that they're excited about and want to accept. We've worked with over 2,200 engineers to date of all seniority, from very junior to very senior. In fact, in the upcoming class, we have I won't get into that. We have a lot of different people, and people coming from big companies and also going to big companies, going from illustrious universities to state schools like me, to community colleges, to self-taught engineers, even high school dropouts, all been through our program and done very well. So basically, no matter where you learn to code, how you learn to code, generally we're a program that can support you. Something that makes us different than most other programs, in our observation, is that we invest, we make our success dependent upon your success. So we're not a free program, but we do make it so that you have either a money back guarantee or we don't get any money until you actually get a job that you want and accept. You're never forced to accept an offer that you don't want. So all of this, yes, it tells you about a little bit about us, but it also provides you a little bit of context as to where this information's coming from. If we're incentivized to make sure our engineers are succeeding, this content, it's got to be pretty on point, got to be pretty accurate. So that's a little bit about us. You can check us out on Yelp as well. We've got overwhelmingly 5 stars. And so just a little bit more detail about the information in this. It's compiled by engineers, recruiters, L&D managers from Google, Uber, Amazon, Apple, all those, a lot of companies that aren't those as well. And it's especially relevant to, software engineers who are actively job seeking or are considering a job change. You might be, in the coming up. Basically, we'll be walking through the job search, a little bit of the job search process, or things that you can do to help optimize your job search process, particularly around your resume. But primarily, we'll be focusing on the interview. That's kind of what we're time constrained to. Anything beyond that would turn into a much longer discussion. And As you all hopefully know by now, my name's Dan, one of the founders here at Outco. So the job search interview process, the stages typically that you go through, you apply to a company that you're interested in. Pretty much everybody knows that at this point. You apply with your resume. A lot of people look over their resume. Part of our program, we actually invest heavily in the resume because we actually think it's much more important than is often given credit for. And I'll talk a little bit about why and what you can do to help buffer or buff up your resume. We'll talk about how you can prep with GitHub and leverage GitHub to your advantage. To help you towards that end, help out your resume as well. We'll talk about certain companies. They offer coaching calls, especially Google. Most people don't know about this, so if it's something that you're interested in, that's something that could be beneficial to you at a company like that. Phone screen is generally the next stage of the process. Some people might call it like a recruiter call, recruiter screen, and most people don't take that too seriously. It does influence your whether or not you get hired. Obviously, in addition to it just not being, if you don't pass it, you don't move forward. Then we'll talk about the tech screen a little bit. This is what most people prep for, and obviously the on-site as well. And then in certain companies, you go to what's called a committee review. It's something you're not present for, and then that gets you to negotiation. So we'll be covering all these topics. I know, so exciting, but that's what we're going to be talking about. And most people don't think about this thing in a holistic fashion. So excited to be discussing it with you. Getting started with the application phase. It's the first step in the process. Once you're kind of on the market or considering being on the market. And with most folks, it comes down to feeling or being qualified. So I'd be interested to know what you all think. The company that you most want to get into, or like your dream job, do you feel like you'd be qualified for it? I'd love to hear in the chat if you feel like you'd be qualified for it here, if you'd like. I don't know. I guess I could also start by asking how many people here are actually job seeking or will be job seeking. Tara doesn't feel qualified. Anybody else? And just so you know, most people say they don't feel that way. So don't feel like you're going to stand out. Most people are in that situation. Sako, I am job seeking, but feel underqualified, not particularly when I look at job descriptions. Just finished the job search. Congrats, Jordan. Glad for that. Stress is off, I hope. I guess now you gotta do the job, right? Ryan, want to be, but not there yet. Job seeking, just graduated a boot camp. Congratulations. Welcome to the wonderful world of job seeking as a software engineer. It'll be your favorite phase of your of your career, I'm sure. Martin, I'm job seeking, don't qualify for things I want to. Imposter syndrome is strong. Job seeking is exhausting and terrifying. I bet that resonates with a lot of people. It certainly resonates with me. If I had to go on the job search right now, I'd feel the jitters for sure, to put it lightly. And I can say, even as the CEO of this company, I experience imposter syndrome as well. I think it's something universal, and it's very normal to be experiencing, especially in something where it feels like the application process or the interview process is more objective, right? It's like, do you have the skills or not? We'll talk a little bit more about why it's not so objective, but the answer is actually probably, especially for big companies. Or at least you can be with some work. And that's kind of the key takeaway message here is, regardless of where you're at, whether you're still, you're even pre-boot camp, or you're thinking about going to a boot camp, or you've been through a boot camp, or you've graduated, or you've been through a CS program, or you're somewhere else in your career life cycle, the imposter syndrome can be real. But with work, you can be qualified. Even these big companies, with projects, with experience, gaining experience in the form of either contract work or, passion projects, whatever it might be, are all things that you have control over, that you can actually help, improve your likelihood of getting hired. The big companies and really the tech industry in general, even at the pit of COVID in like March, April, May of last year, 2020, we still had lots and lots of people getting hired. It did slump a little bit in May, but generally speaking, the market was still hiring in tech. So it's a great place to be. And I know for those of you breaking in that you're excited for that. And especially the big companies, they're hiring at all levels. So someone mentioned that the job descriptions is intimidating, and a lot of companies do that kind of on purpose. They want to kind of say it's almost a filtering mechanism unto itself. If you don't self-select, then you're someone who probably shouldn't be there anyway, or at least that's kind of the theory. So they might say 3 years plus experience, but if you roll in and say, you know what, I can do what 3 years experience can do, or I will get there very, very quickly, and put yourself out there. We've had people get jobs that they're many years, quote unquote, underqualified for. So I just want to put those pieces out there. In terms of like getting your foot in the door, that's like the idea with the application. And most of the time people go through sort of the standard application process. Like Google.com, jobs.google.com. You submit your resume via the company's public job board, and for most companies, more than 60% of resumes are received this way. I actually think this is probably too low of a number. I think it's even higher than that. I haven't updated this data in a little bit, but last I saw it, I think I saw recently it was actually in the 70 percentages. But then there's this other avenue called the referral process. That whole old adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the majority of hires are actually made through people getting referred into a company. So, it's only about 30% of the apps that are received this way, but they have a 3 times higher interview rate, and over 60% of the hires are made this way. So you up your odds of getting hired, or at least an interview, significantly just by developing a relationship with somebody at the company you're interested in, or companies that you're interested in, and getting in through that referral track. It's something, a technique we've actually developed here called reverse recruiting, that we teach for actually going out, developing those types of relationships. So something that we really encourage: don't be shy about reaching out to people on LinkedIn. Don't be shy about finding people's emails online, and just shoot them an email. The worst they can do is ignore it. But it could also start, something of a friendship that could ultimately land you a job at a company you're really interested in. When you're ready to actually apply, you'll be using your resume. Again, it's still this application process. Most people think of the resume as only applying to this first stage in the interview process. But I want to, if you don't look at my screen at any time, this is the one little magical animation. It actually applies to every stage of the interview process. We've got really high production values here at Outco, in case you haven't noticed. But the resume actually applies at every single stage of the interview process. So you might make it to the on-site, where they ask you these really complex, esoteric questions that you never see in your actual software engineering day-to-day career, but nevertheless you make it through the gauntlet. You solve it, and then you still don't get an offer. That could be because you're not the only person who's going to be at the onsite. You're not the only person that might solve those questions correctly. So they might be looking at your resume and say, you know what, this person's just not as impressive as this other person. So if you can make the investment in your resume, that might be the thing that on the back end, when they're comparing you to the other people you're kind of competing against, that might be the thing that tips the scales in your favor and moves you into the offer slot, or puts you up on the negotiation table for being able to ask for more money, or a signing bonus or something like that, or regardless, just move you forward in the interview process. So let's talk a little bit about your resume. I know this is like everyone's favorite subject. Everyone just loves, like, yes, I'm unemployed and I get to update my resume again. I love this part of life. So why for them? It's it's an easy filtering mechanism. They can just look at it and spend, the average recruiter at Google, it's shown, spends on average 6 seconds looking at a resume before they're deciding yes or no. It's like about Tinder length. You get about that long before they're going left or right. So so it applies for you again at every single stage of the interview process. It really does matter. It's one page, easily scannable. So we want to make sure that your resume is just digestible. Again, 6 seconds. They're going to take a look. Yes, no, and ideally you've got the keywords, the pieces that really make you stand out, and numbers that might catch their eye. If not here, then further into the interview process, when they're taking a deeper look at what you are, who you are. Excuse me. Um, what you've done. I shouldn't say who you are, because what you've done isn't necessarily who you are. But anyway, uh, so those pieces all can really make a big difference. There's an acronym that actually comes out of Google that we recommend people follow. ARM, it's Action Results Metrics. These are the kind of the pieces that you can use for building out your resume bullet points. Here's an actual resume of someone who went through our program. Pretty junior engineer. I don't think they'd had any yeah, they were an intern. So that they had about 2 months of internship experience. They had their education right up at the top, which, be it a boot camp or university or whatever. And their skills way buried down at the bottom. And so if you're scanning this, you might maybe, okay, in this case, they got a computer science degree, but if you didn't, the first thing they're going to see is, not computer science degree, and they might not catch that that's an intern, and just move right past you. So, and again, this is an actual resume that we've seen at our program here. We recommend you have your skills first, right up at the top. I'll show you the this is the before. I'll show you the after, then followed by your experience. Your experience kind of demonstrates the skill set that you claim, or that you establish that you have, right up at the top. Maybe then followed by your education. If you're fortunate enough, one of the 1.001% who went through like a really great college, maybe that's something you put higher up in your resume. But for most of us, that's something we experience, is kind of the new education, if you will. Projects can back up experience. If you don't have experience, then your projects might be kind of the in lieu of experience piece, and we can get a little more into that with the the GitHub part that I'm going to discuss here in a second. ARM, again, each bullet point you want to be describing an action that you took, backing it up with the results that came out of it. And ideally, those results are described in terms of metrics. Especially in tech, people tend to be very data driven, or at least that's what a lot of people tell themselves, and they want to see those numbers. This is the after. So and actually I'll show you side by side so you can see the difference. But again, the skills right up at the top, and there's a little trick you can do. You can break out the different technologies that you've used in terms of something that you're proficient in, or confident in, and then exposure. Maybe you haven't worked much with it. You haven't built anything that you're maybe not even particularly proud of, but nevertheless you dabbled in it. And that alone, if they put your resume through a word scan, they might be searching for keywords on it. Then you might get a couple extra points on it, and move over to a pass on the resume. Or like this person, maybe they're doing prototyping and Ruby on Rails for like fast just prototyping, and they say, oh, you know what, they've got some exposure to Ruby on Rails, maybe they'd be good for this project. So you want to get like basically as much on there as possible. Of course, we don't want anyone to lie or anything, but anything that might even be worth putting on there probably should, if you've dabbled in it. So again, skills right up at the top, backed up by the experience, and then followed by everything else. So and I do want to show a quick demonstration of the bullet points. We'll just do just the top one from each, from the before, and the top bullet from after. Developed and deployed automation software for configuration testing of nationwide station racks, improving technician productivity by 20%. So the before, and the after: optimize manual config searches by web scraping configuration pages using that's not how you spell Ruby on Rails and Nokogiri, removing need for 800 plus hours of manual configuration searches. Those might sound pretty similar to you, but if you sort of put on like the hiring manager hat and read the second one, you'll see, well, actually, let's start with the first one. That last part: improving technician productivity by approximately 20%. That's kind of vague. That doesn't really mean anything to a hiring manager, right? Versus if you have that in that first bullet point in the after part where it says removing need for 800 hours of manual configuration searches, that becomes then a dollar sign in the interviewer's mind, right? Especially the hiring managers thinking, well, if they can add that kind of value here, that saves us, X tens or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, or you make an impact on in terms of like revenue gained or users retained or whatever it is. You make it more in dollars and cents. It makes the hiring manager think this is somebody who can make me look really good, which is at the end of the day probably what they're most thinking about, not about what your impact will be with the company. So this is the before and after on the left and the versus the right. We've found A/B testing over time. This template on the right is something that is much more easily scannable. It looks very organized and it does very well. So if you want, take a screenshot of that. I would recommend organizing your resume in that format. Can make a really big difference. Following the ARM bullet description strategy, and again with the technical skills up at the top, backed up by work experience. And if you don't have work experience, then projects. And don't worry, we'll talk a little bit more about projects. So again, using sort of the outline here, when you prepare with when you talk about preparing with GitHub, there's a couple areas it makes the biggest difference in your resume, which we're talking about right now, and then the tech screen and onsite. So I just want to call out that what I'm about to talk about applies not just to the resume piece, but also the tech screen and onsite specifically, and it can make a difference in the phone screen as well. So preparing with GitHub, this is one of the best things you could do right now. If you're wondering, how can I make myself a better, qualified engineer? One of the best things you could do right now, right after this session, is to fire open a repo and start building something. Even if you're just fully immersed in the job search, you're doing I don't know, algorithm meditation or whatever crazy stuff you might be trying out. What you want to be doing is thinking about it from the interviewer's perspective. When you come in and say, hey, hey, when they say, what are you up to right now? Or what have you been up to recently? Or tell me about, your most recent engineering, whatever. And you're like, well, I'm looking for a job. Well, they're going to say, well, no kidding. That's why you're here. So what they want to hear is, I'm building the greatest stuff. I'm all in the engineering, whatnot. They want to hear basically that you're just enthralled with your passion, which is software engineering, and that's what you're doing in your spare time. Obviously, you don't want to take it to like an unhealthy degree and literally just be living at your computer, but you want to be doing something that shows that you're tangibly moving your skill set forward, that it's not atrophying, and that you're actively passionate about this. So again, one of the best things you could do is fire open a repo right now. For senior engineers, it can make a big difference too. Looking to level up, it can also make probably an even bigger impact for junior engineers, especially those looking to get their very first job. There's lots of boot camp grads out there. There's lots of CS grads out there, and there's a good number of self-taught folks out there too. The biggest thing that you can do to make yourself differentiate from all those other folks is firing open repos, building stuff on your own, if not, through like a contract, even through a friend, a family member, whatever, they've got a company, or, of a local nonprofit or something that might need a website or a database built or something like that, then you can put on your resume under that experience heading versus, projects. And that makes you an experienced engineer. And same thing here with GitHub. So there's a couple different techniques you can use with GitHub. And again, this is just kind of giving you some like a concrete example. Again, when they tell us about your background or most recent projects, you want to be able to say, that you're passionate about software engineering. It strengthens your technical points. You can actually talk more about the technical things you've been doing, and more recently, if you get on a cool like a well-known project, it can add legitimacy to your name. There's sort of this fringe benefit if there's this networking opportunity, right? We know multiple people. In fact, I know somebody who right now is just starting to contribute on an open source project. and he's actively networking with what happened. He didn't know this. It happened to be the founder of a company that he was actually interested in interviewing with. So can make a really big difference for you on the networking side, and again, shows that you can work at a production level code base. So you've demonstrated that you have a process for pushing code, committing to it, or committing it, and having it reviewed in a code review way, versus most folks, especially junior engineers, when they're building their own projects, you're just kind of, a lot of times you're just pushing it to master, and like you're not really demonstrating that you've got the process of software engineering down, or the process of contributing to a sizable project, or a non-trivial project, or an active ongoing project that you don't just want to be pushing to straight to production, as it were. So again, for the GitHub piece specifically, starting your own project repo is one way to go. Something you'd be proud of showcasing, something you'd be interested in building that you'd think is fun or might solve a problem for you. Or you can find a repo to work on that's already out there. A lot of us aren't just like entrepreneurs, or aren't product people, and being able to think of like something that somebody needs. So, there's plenty of other people who have thought of the thing and want more people to help them work on it. So that's definitely a way to go. GitHub has actually some really great resources on it. GitHub.com/trending, or /explore, or /topics, or /collections. These can all be really great places to go get great resources, great projects, to get an opportunity to contribute to. You might also search first PR, first pull request, or first repo, first open source. These all return, again, projects that are even better for the person who's just getting started, contributing to open source projects. And again, this applies to everyone from junior engineers to senior engineers. Can make a really big difference in demonstrating your passion and your skill set as well. You definitely want to pick a language that you're either familiar with, or one that you want to grow in. Don't fall, I just want to use a word of caution here, don't fall into the trap of dabbling. You want to try to develop expertise and develop a skill set that is valuable. If you're dabbled wide, it's going to be harder to make the sale that you're someone who should be on a team and making contributions. Of course, learning is a key skill set of any software engineer, but I just want to offer there's a reasonable limit to that. The easiest projects to jump into are well documented. So, you might want to start first with the documentation, the README, check it out, see if it's something that you can wrap your mind around pretty quickly. The only downside to the easiest projects, or the most well documented projects, often are also the ones that are most well contributed to, and a lot of the tickets that are outstanding might be a little more complex. So if you're more senior, that might not be an issue for you. If you're more junior, the trade-off is you might have to go with something that's more of like a trending opportunity, something that's up and coming, might not be as well documented, therefore might not be as well as thoroughly being contributed to. But there's a bigger opportunity to perhaps solve some cool things and really stretch yourself. And again, the networking opportunity, getting in and on a community that's working on something, can be really rewarding and very beneficial for your job search as well. Um, and I don't know why that added that in at the last second, but yeah, it can be faster, more significant in terms of what you're contributing to. So all that for upping your resume. There's a lot there. Hopefully at the bare minimum, the resume, your projects that you've gotten, is getting you to the phone screen right at this point. And I want to emphasize, if you make it to the phone screen, it means on paper someone said this person could work here. That's already been a decision. This is a potentially or a fully viable person on paper, or digital paper, or whatever we're calling it these days. So so at this point, it's yours to lose. If you make it to the phone screen, the only reason you won't make it past the phone screen, this is assuming the person doing the phone screening who contributed to you getting to the phone screen is actually doing their job. We'll just assume that that's happening. At this point, it's about being able to communicate your skill set and your value. So the phone screen, again, why for them? They're kind of incrementally investing in you to see, are you someone we want to fully invest in and bring onto the team, and make sure you've got this quote unquote fit. Why for you? Again, it factors into the final decision. And just like the resume, imagine my fancy little automation. If we could pay if we could afford those high production levels to be used again, it applies to every single point of the interview process going forward. So um, the fit, what they're basically looking at, any interviews looking at two things: can you do the job, and do I want to work with you? So on the can you do the job piece, you already know this. It's the skills, it's the experience, education, the learning ability, curiosity, and again, that can be demonstrated through what you're doing in your spare time with things like GitHub. And then the would I want to work with you, attitude, the communication, the experience, history, curiosity, all those things factor in as well. Some companies, like Google, they actually have like a term for it. They call it googliness, and basically they want to think of the people that they work with as quirky, curious, people who are really going at it. And so this is where looking at the company's job description can be really important for you. You want to look at the job description and familiarize yourself. What kind of culture do they have? What are they really trying to build here? Outside of just whatever the product or the service is. And then again, you want to try to take on the mindset that you're one of those people and that you belong at that company. And that's kind of coming out as you're speaking about yourself in the phone screen and every interaction that you have. Um, to get a little more specific, they're going to Google actually uses this process like formally. They have it drilled out in this kind of a formula. They look at your coding analytical skills, or at least they do their best to ascertain it based on your resume and what you say in these questions. General cognitive ability, that's actually an acronym that they have at Google, GCA. Basically what that comes down to is communication skills. It's just a really fancy way of saying communication skills. Leadership potential, companies like Amazon actually have 50% of every single interview that you go through with them focus on your leadership potential. Basically, they want to see you have a desire for future impact and a potential return on investment. When you get asked a question like, why do you want to work here? It's not because you're a world-class organization and I'll grow so much and I want to work with really good engineers because then I'll grow. Because what are you saying there? Me, 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 me. What they want to hear on their end is me, 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 me. They want to hear you talking about them and how you're going to contribute to them, how you're going to add value to them, and what you're bringing to the table. So that leadership potential can make a really big difference for folks. The culture fit, it's the other 25%. Even a lot of times it's subconscious, and this is therefore where a lot of the biases come in. All the isms, the racism, sexism, ageism. There's a lot of things that can start to get into the equation here, welcome or not, or conscious or not. I just want to call it out. This is where that comes in. It might come out in the phrase of, do we want to work with this person? Again, another common thing is, do the values align? They might call it culture fit. And really what it comes down to is people and communication skills. At the end of the day, the best thing that you can do is familiarizing yourself with what they're looking for in their job description and trying to emulate that as best as you can. Hopefully what you're emulating is as close to you as possible, and that's the kind of place you want to work, and that's the place you'd be most likely to fit in. And that's something that we really encourage and emphasize, folks, because there's nothing worse than getting into a job that you're excited about, finding you can't be safe, you can't be yourself, and then you got to be right back on the fun merry-go-round of the coding job search again. So um, really want to emphasize those bits. With the phone screen, the format, it's going to be 15 to 30-minute phone call. It's going to be almost always non-tech. They might ask like a little trivia question, but it's generally non-tech. Again, questions: what percentage of your job now involves coding? Tell me about your most recent project. Well, I've been working on these GitHub projects, or I've been working with my friend, or I've been doing this. It may be even unpaid contract work. You don't say it's unpaid. I've been doing this contract. It's really cool. Let me tell you about it. why are you the right person for the job? Some other varieties of these questions, the hardest problem you've ever solved. You know, tell me about a time you had multiple deliverables. How did you prioritize? And then you might get a trick question like, you know, they're going to try to get you to say something negative about yourself. What do you dislike about having a manager? And, you know, if you say, oh, they're micromanaging and, you know, blah, 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 that makes it seem like you might not be someone who's fun to work with or manage. Ideally, you take these negatives and spin them into a positive about yourself. So, you know, I really recognize that managers have a really tough job. They got to control expectations with their managers, but also hold the line with their direct reports. So, you know, what I always try to do is be a resource for them and try to sit down and really understand what they're saying, and just be, you know, as supportive as I can be. And you just turned this question into you looking like the most amazing employee that's ever existed. Um, and you know, same thing. Tell me about time you had conflict at work. Why do you want to work here? Again, and I just want to. This might seem super obvious, but at this point, I wish I'd said this earlier. In retrospect, we get we see people get tripped up on this all the time. Why do you want to work here? And sometimes they're not. They don't even know what company they're interviewing at anymore. They're just like, because I want a paycheck. So like ideally, you know, read the job description before you get into the phone screen, and you really want to be able to talk about the company and why you think you'd be a good fit there, or at least what resonates with you in that company, and really emphasize those pieces. Decision, it's going to be based, you know, your phone screen performance, the GCA rubric. I'm going to show you real quick what the GCA rubric is that actually is used at Google. So they have this scoring rubric. You know, do you understand the problem or the question that we asked you? And they give you a 1, 2, 3, 4 score. Yes, they fully understood it, or they did not understand it. You know, something in between. Were you prepared? Did you solve the problem? Results, again, like, did you demonstrate your results, and ideally, did your results support the story that you told? You know, we've had people, you know, go off on tangents about the great results that they created, and that it didn't relate back to the question that the interviewer was asking. So can be a helpful rubric for understanding general cognitive ability. So just want to be a little more concrete there. Whoa, where am I? Here I am. And again, your resume, do you stand out from competing applicants? Might be keyword search, projects, numbers, all these things, the ARM action results metrics. And then important point on negotiation at this point, how much salary you can earn versus how much you want to earn. Right, you might get asked, like, basically, you know, how much do you want to be making here, or what's your salary expectation? These questions are actually designed to box you in. They're trying to get you to agree to as small of a number as possible, so that way on the back end, ideally, they don't even have to bring it up again. They just tell you, you know, this is what your salary is, and you say okay, because that's kind of what was set as expectations at the beginning. But really, you want to investigate the market for, you know, what the rate is for this type of company in the geography that you're in, years of experience you have, the skill set, the types of thing you're building, that type of company, all these pieces, and you want to try to give a range, a salary range that you think will at least overlap with their range and maybe even exceed it a little bit, so you're not undershooting yourself. Gives them a little bit of wiggle room, gives you a little bit of wiggle room. And you know, that way, there's a whole lot I could go into here. There's a whole bunch of game theory that we teach that gets into the negotiation, but I just want to emphasize that basically, you know, companies are going to try to get you boxed in early on, and just pay attention to these questions and practice answering the questions. It can be very uncomfortable to try to push back on an interviewer on the salary point right up at the beginning. You don't want to turn it into like a, you know, I don't know, a used car dealership, like intense, like haggling session, but you want to be firm on what you're looking for and anchor to the higher side, you know, if you can. And yeah, the recruiters, they're trained to get you in at the lowest they can, right? So tech screens. So ideally, again, if you've got to the phone screen, there shouldn't be much of a reason for you not to move forward to the tech screen. So the tech screen is we're just sort of bunching in. It could be a technical take home. It could be, a one-on-one that's like more of a coding session, a pair programming session online. And sometimes they'll let you do these twice, but for the most part you just got one shot at it. And again, they're investing a little bit more with their engineering skills. Why for you? Again, factors into the final decision. The format, it's usually 45 minutes. It's usually a hard stop. Ideally they want your code to compile. You might be asked a brief intro question, and by the way, especially at the bigger companies, these intro questions actually matter. We've had people completely nail the on-site even, and then they didn't get the offer. When they asked why, they'd been asked one little side question. Hey, tell me about a time you had a conflict with the manager. And you're like, what? I'm coding. Get out of here. Like, why are you asking me this? And then you don't get the offer because you didn't demonstrate leadership potential, or you didn't demonstrate whatever it is that they were looking for. And because somebody else did, you didn't get the offer. So be mindful. The non-technical questions they might slip in at this stage can be a make or break. So take those seriously. Take the time to answer it properly. Again, it's usually a live coding session. A lot of times it's data structures and algorithms focused on performance. So these CS fundamentals. And the idea is they're trying to make sure that you understand how to write performant code. They don't want their code base to get slowed down, or they only want to hire real engineers, or whatever their justification is. But the intention, generally speaking, is well, either they ask data structures, algorithms, problems, again, making sure you can write performant code, or it is a more objective way of filtering on skills. So there's a right or wrong answer. It's either optimized or it's not. There's no subjectivity to it, so it makes it something that they can use kind of as a blanket interview process, and remove any subjectivity. That's the theory anyway. You'll usually be using some IDE, or IDE. Maybe it'll even be like a Google Doc or something totally ridiculous that you don't normally write code in, or a whiteboard. So just be prepared for that. And generally speaking, at this stage, they're going to be giving minimal hints. So just be prepared for that. Don't take it personally. It's just something that we've seen is generally the case in these at this stage of interviews. Again, usually if they do the kind of non-technical question, it'll usually be at the beginning, and it might even feel just kind of casual. But again, that is an interview question, and they are writing down your answer. So make sure you take it seriously. It's really easy to blow that off because you're so focused on, like, oh my God, I'm going to have to code in 5 minutes in front of somebody, and I'm gonna have a heart attack. How much coding are you doing? These types of questions, we already discussed this. What's your favorite language, purpose, complexity of the most recent project you've done? And then the technical question. And it might be something like, given a list of integers, find the frequency of a target. And, the questions can vary in style widely based on the interviewer, the company you're interviewing at. Generally speaking, at this stage, they don't want to see pseudocode. I know a lot of schools out there train on pseudocode and as part of the problem solving process. And unfortunately, a lot of companies short circuit that by not allowing pseudocode. There's a trick that we teach that we call ASCII diagramming. It's something that you can do anywhere, especially on a whiteboard. At whiteboard, it's not ASCII, it's hand diagramming. But in a like a word editor, the ASCII diagram that we teach, by the way, I'm not trying to pitch the program here, but if you go to our info session and then sign up for a visitor class, we teach you how to ASCII diagram in the visitor class. It's totally free, so that can be helpful for you, just if you want to check that out. Determining strengths, constraints, edge cases. A lot of pieces there that like in given a list of integers, find the frequency of a target. A question you might want to ask is, well, is the target in the list of integers? Right? Seems like almost implied in the question, but it's not necessarily. They might say maybe, or you don't know, or we don't know. So something to factor in here. You want to catch as many of the edge cases as you can, ideally all of them. And again, generally speaking, the code must compile at the 45 hour mark, depending on the company that you're at. You want to focus on performance. Again, the time and space complexity, you want to be constantly revisiting that. Some of you may have become familiar with it as it's spoken as big O notation. And again, start with the best solution that comes to mind. Don't worry if you see a problem and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how I'm going to solve that. Just start somewhere, even if you know this isn't performant, or you're like, this would totally crash your machine if you did it this way. That's okay. Just start there and you can always iterate towards a better solution. Something else that's really important, always be communicating. It's really easy to get into a problem, and we'll pretend we're at a virtual, one-on-one coding session here, and I'm just so focused on what I'm doing, and all they hear is the clickety clack of my keyboard, and they are looking at my forehead the whole time, and it's a terrible experience for them. It's what it is for you. But the best thing that you can do is just communicate. Okay, well, right now I'm trying to work through how the heck I'm gonna, do this part, or I'm worried about the performance on this, but I'll revisit that later. Just or right now I'm going to write the first line of whatever, and just be communicating it. Sometimes you can almost use it to buy yourself time as you're working through the problem. And by the way, the best thing that you can do to make yourself stand out here in this way is practice talking as you're practicing problems at home. If you're doing leak code, if you're doing whatever, or if you're building a little project that you might get this kind of interview problem, practice talking out loud. If you got people who live with you and they think you're crazy, that's too bad. It's part of the process. You'll be more comfortable talking. Most of us aren't sitting here talking as we're typing, so you want to get in the habit of doing that as you're working through it. And again, iterate towards each solution with better performance. A lot of times they'll nest problems, so you might get started off with something that seems easily approachable, and then they add in a constraint, or some edge case, or something that you didn't think of, and then, oh wow, it completely changed the problem. Just be ready for that. It's okay. It's part of the process. Um, I'm not going to say it's designed to throw you off, although certainly some interviewers do have that intention. Um, you just if as long as you're prepared for that, you're and almost expect it, it'll just be another part of the problem here. The idea is, again, get to the solution as fast as you can. I know that's easily said, but you want to be iterating towards the solution, I guess, is what that should say. So the decision as to whether or not you pass the technical screen performance, did your code compile? Was it optimized? Were you easy to communicate? Did you communicate? Is perhaps another question. And then the phone screen performance before that. So, maybe you did a little shaky on the technical screen. Like, yeah, you passed, but it wasn't quite fully optimized. You were heading in the right direction. And then they look at your phone screen notes and they're like, well, you know, John or Betty really loved them, so yeah, we're going to move them forward because they said some really outstanding things, and they'd be a great fit here. So let's move them forward to the onsite and see what they can do. So again, that's another reason every single stage kind of is additive to the next stages. As you're going through, same thing with your resume. Between your phone screen and your resume, ideally those are now two advocates you have for you that are helping kind of push you through the rest of the interview process. Um, as you're going through. So the onsites, they tend to be, I know they might sound different than, you're working on a whiteboard. That's honestly pretty much it, but they're generally pretty similar to the tech screen. So I'm not going to go too into the weeds here. And this could also turn into a much longer discussion than it needs to be. At the big companies anyway, this is how it's formatted. If you're going to like a more mid-size or smaller company, it might not be 4 to 5 interviews. It might just be 1 or 2. Alternatively, they might have you sit down and pair program with somebody for the day, depending on the company. Pivotal does it that way. So there's a lot of different ways they might have it, but generally speaking, there's some block of on-sites with problems that you're solving or software that you're building. And for those of you who are more senior or mid-level, they tend to use at least one system design type of problem, or a code review question that determines your leveling, how senior or how deep into the mid-level you're gonna be. Typically, it's on a whiteboard. Although with COVID, a lot of companies actually have switched to virtual whiteboards. And nevertheless, there's always the pair programming in an IDE, which is sort of the trusted standby. A lot of times you can pseudocode at this stage. A lot of times they still prefer you don't. Um, And again, that's where the diagramming, ASCII diagramming can come into play. Generally speaking, the rest of the parameters are pretty much the same. Do want to emphasize, especially at the onsite, if you are physically on site, which I hope not many companies are doing that still, but I hope you're not experiencing it with anybody. But if you do, you want to start paying attention to your body language. That could get into a whole different thing. I won't dive into right now. So again, that's the decision whether or not to move you through to the committee review. It's your on-site performance, your analytical skills, coding skills, communication experience, your technical screen performance, your phone screen performance, all the variables we discussed in all of these. And generally speaking, if you're rejected here, they're not going to give you any feedback. The reason being, they've determined that you're not qualified technically or perhaps interpersonally to work at the company. So it's not worth them taking any sort of chance that you might, come at them with any sort of bias claim. And generally speaking, they won't give feedback here. That's their attorneys talking. And that's generally speaking what it is. I would still recommend that you always ask, though. The worst thing they can just say is no. But the best thing, maybe they'll even just give you like an indirect hint as to what it was. And that way, at least and ideally, it's specific enough that you can actually take action and go work on it. So then at the next one, you're that much better prepared. The hiring committee, especially at the big companies, basically like, okay, they're technically qualified to work here. Do they actually fit into a seat? Did the recruiter do their job? Basically, look, all these pieces that factor in. One thing that you might not consider, though, is this is where the referrals tend to come into play. And again, by the way, they might not call it the hiring committee. It might just be the CEO and the CTO talking. It might be the hiring manager and the CTO. But at the bigger companies, again, it's a more formalized process. And this is where the internal reviews can come into play. They might say, well, so-and-so really strongly recommended them. And, they passed all these pieces. Sure, they weren't like the most standout person technically, but, with the referral and how they did on the phone screen and everybody really liked them. So I think let's move them forward. So the employees' opinions actually do matter. So I don't know why I have this on here twice, but you might get feedback at this point because you have technically qualified for the program. So if again, I always recommend you always ask, but here you might even be able to press for it. If you find out you've been to the committee review and you didn't get accepted, would definitely ask for feedback. And sometimes even different committee members will offer feedback, and really you'll get a really nice spectrum of feedback at that point to work from. The good news is usually if you've made it that far, you're close enough, they might consider you for a different position, and you might ask for that. Hey, I made it to the committee review. Is there any other team that you could point me to or introduce me to that I might be able to interview at? Even big companies that have the policy of having a cool off period if you get rejected, a lot of times if you've made it to the committee, they might slot you in earlier, sometimes much earlier, into a follow-up interview. So negotiation, it's I'm not, this is that we spend a full day on this, so I'm not going to get too much into this, but basically the biggest suggestions I could make for helping you with negotiation is expand the top of your funnel. If you think about your job search as a funnel, the top being sort of like who you apply to, you want to expand that as much as possible. Get as many opportunities going in your funnel as possible. The more opportunities you have in your funnel, the more that are ultimately, basically, you're kind of, in theory, if you're doing this, you're kind of widening up the end, which is ideally, multiple, if not one, if not multiple offers down there at the end. And you get to choose the one that you're most interested in. And also at every single stage, the further you get, if you're going deeper with multiple companies, you can say, hey, I've got an onsite with this company. I'm waiting to hear back on an offer from this company. And you sound, it sort of builds that FOMO of, you're a hot topic. You're an engineer that's in demand. And that can also, that momentum can really, really work in your favor. An additional factor here is it's really great practice. No matter, we say at our program, no matter if we had, $1 billion, maybe if we had $1 billion, if we had, a lot of money to put together, this incredible virtual interview environment. It's never quite psychologically the same as going into a different building, or logging into a different Zoom with people you've never met, with a different job on the line, and feeling kind of the pressure there. And after you do that enough times, that becomes second nature to you. You're not necessarily focused on, oh my God, is my shirt on straight, or is my hair done, or whatever it is. It's like, okay, I'm here to perform. I've been here a bunch of times. I'm ready to go, and that's that. So again, we want to try to make it. You want to try to make it as much subconscious as possible, and leads to interviewing at multiple companies. Different elements of the compensation package. You might be able to negotiate on one versus the other. So, you might be able to say like, hey, you matched me about as this other offer I've got on the base salary, but they're offering me a $10,000 signing bonus. Can you offer me that? Or maybe you just got two about equal offers and you ask both for a signing bonus, and maybe that's the thing that tips your scales to going towards whichever one you want, and play one against the other. So that's the interview process on a whole. Applying, resume, coaching call, the phone screen, text screen, on-site, committee review, negotiation. If you'd like, you can sign up for an info session here. I've got, if you want to learn more about Outco, and again, that visitor class, we go through ASCII diagramming, which can be helpful for you in your problem solving process at a company. So if you want to learn more about Outco, I'll put a little form there. You can just fill it out, and you'll basically, you're signing up for an info session. It's totally free, and you can learn more about us if you want. But otherwise, I'm going to open it up to Q&A here. If you'd like ask anything, feel free. If you want to apply to Outco, there's the link. But that's that. Hopefully that wasn't too much, but any questions, I'm happy to answer. I'll check out the chat here as well. And yeah, would love to hear from anybody. Ryan said, I want to be, but not there. Oh, that was from earlier. Martin, job seeking. I think we read that one. Martin, note for Colorado, as of January 1st, it is state law that a job posting must include the salary range for the role. That's awesome. That's great to hear. So you know what you're walking into, and there's no mystery there as to what the constraints are for you.
I want to say that, Dan, it was really helpful.
Yeah.
We were like, I mean, our returnship group was always trying to get the job. So we were going through all these things that you mentioned, but not specifically like this. So it's really helpful to us, especially. So thank you for that incredible session.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. And again, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions we have. Did I go a little over? Was I supposed to be done by now?
No, that's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to
I'm
respect everyone's time.
gonna pause the recording. So if anyone wants to unmute and ask question, they can do that.